I wanted to ask a question. What is multilateralism? And what does that look like?
I'm delighted to be a part of this and to have a chance to answer that question because I'm known as Multilateral Madeline.
The United Nations is marking its 75th anniversary at a time of unprecedented challenges presented by COVID-19. At a time when multilateral institutions and international cooperation are being questioned, we thought it was important to have a conversation about the role of international organizations like the United Nations, the United States leadership and engagement in the world. We're honored to be joined today by Secretary Madeleine Albright and Ambassador Caroline Kennedy, who have firsthand knowledge of the importance of the United Nations and the critical role the United States can play in advancing international cooperation. Secretary Albright was also ambassador to the United Nations and distinguished diplomatic career and the person for whom the phrase Madam Secretary was inaugurated. Welcome to our conversation, Secretary Albright.
Great to be with you. Very happy. Thank you for including me.
Ambassador Kennedy has a distinguished career as a lawyer, author, and diplomat, serving as ambassador of the United States to Japan, and also an enthusiastic supporter of education. And because of her suggestion, we've involved students who've been affiliated with the Marble Hill School for International Studies in the Bronx. Ambassador Kennedy, welcome. And could you say a few words about the school and your relationship?
Thank you, John, and thank you, Microsoft, for bringing us all together. And it's great to be with Secretary Albright, who I've admired for so many years. I'm really excited that the students are able to join us. They're students that I've worked with over their high school careers. Some of them are now in college. And international poetry exchange programs, spoken word competitions held virtually over the past 5 years with students in Japan, Korea, and the Philippines. So I think that we saw a little bit about how students around the world can work together. And the Marble Hill School is really an extraordinary school because there are students there whose families come from all over the world. And I think I've really learned a great deal from them.
Excellent. The four students we should introduce.
Hi, my name is Bismary Batista. I'm a junior at Marble Hill High School for International Studies, where I'm studying Japanese. I'm from the Dominican Republic and I live in the Bronx.
Hello, hi. My name is Fatimata Kamara. I'm from the Gambia. I'm currently attending Baruch College to study international business, and I am a former graduate of Marble Hill.
My name is Christopher Valdivia. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a second-year Latino student from the Bronx, and currently, right now, I'm attending Bard College, and I am studying cultural anthropology and literature. And lately, I've been thinking about short stories.
Hi, my name is Yao Zhang. I'm a Chinese student living in the Bronx right now. I'm currently studying biology at Stony Brook University.
We're going to ask them to pose some questions, but first we want to take the opportunity to go to a video clip of Trevor Noah, who was here as part of our United Nations programming this week in a conversation with Brad Smith, talking about the importance of youth in global affairs. Let's look at the clip.
What has inspired me? Realizing how much kids want to learn. People have so many ideas about children. You take for granted that their minds are designed like a sponge. They want to absorb information. If you give it to them, 9 times out of 10, they absorb it. They want to work on a computer. They want to become the technology leaders of tomorrow. They want to build the future.
Let's go to our students. Do you have any reactions to Trevor's comments?
I certainly agree with what Trevor Noah is saying. I feel like education has a lot of power, and with the right resources, we certainly and definitely can build and prepare the future leaders of tomorrow.
I definitely agree with what he's talking about. Kids these days have the means of achieving what they want to achieve. They just don't know how to go about doing it, and they need adults to teach them which way they should use their knowledge and how they can go about doing the things they want to do.
Oftentimes, all we really need is that little push and to be reassured that we can say things about certain things.
I agree. I think kids today are so knowledgeable about current world events that are happening before our eyes, and we need adults to believe in us so that we can really change the world.
Excellent. And so we're going to invite you to ask questions of our distinguished guests. And so, Chris, I think the first question is yours.
I wanted to ask a question more or less both to clarify what the question is or what one of the themes of this is. What is multilateralism and what does that look like?
Secretary Albright?
I'm delighted to be a part of this and to have a chance to answer that question because I'm known as Multilateral Madeline. People don't like the word multilateralism because it has too many syllables and it ends in an ism, but it is basically partnership and working with others in order to solve problems that even very strong people or countries cannot solve alone. And I believe it is an essential way of trying to get solution to some of the issues that are out there now. So I am a great believer in it. And I think it needs to be seen as partnership, working with others to solve problems.
Pastor Kennedy, would you like to comment?
Well, I don't think I can do better than that. But I think that there are so many areas in which we need to work with other countries. The United States does, and even within our own societies, we need to respect the power of partnerships and really put in the work that takes to listen, to understand, to appreciate where other people are coming from, to compromise, and have faith in each other to build a better future.
Our next question comes from Yao Zheng.
So my question is, many regions tend to exercise a more rigid education system or upbringing where girls are demanded and taught to fit into their own respective gender roles. How do you think international interactions might impact those who grew up under such expectations?
Well, the education and empowerment of women, girls and women, is really one of the most significant factors in improving a country's economic health, the status of society, and the peace and prosperity of the region and the world that they are in. And I think the UN has recognized this for many, many years. It's one of their central goals. So I think that the international community has come together to encourage societies to do this. And every time young women and girls see a woman succeed, I think that's tremendously inspiring, even if they're from another country. And it goes the other way. I know I met the Afghan girls robotics team who won a worldwide competition, and they had just education in Afghanistan for girls is really a new thing. And these girls just inspired the world and showed that girls can do anything just as well as boys. So I think that it will take time. Women's equality is something that the United States is still struggling with. But I think if we're all honest about the importance of it and the benefits of it, that the UN is really one of the most important places where this issue can be advanced.
Secretary Albright, I suspect you've got comments on this as well.
Well, I do think that we learn from each other. And it is very important that as women are progressing in a number of different positions throughout the world, that we don't forget what we can do to be helpful to those that are coming up, and speaking about the importance of women's education and the role that girls and women play in society. I have always felt very strongly about this and feel that it is essential for us to keep pushing because it is not a given and things move backwards. And so I think examples have to be used an awful lot. I have spoken a lot about the fact that societies, more than half societies and countries in the world, are female, and that it is a wasting of a resource of the power of women and girls to participate. So we have to keep talking about examples where it makes a difference. I think the UN has been very good in this in terms of really pushing a number of resolutions that have to do with women, making sure that women also are able to run for office, and talking about the importance of education, obviously beginning early. And so I think it's essential to support that within the UN and generally, and keep talking about examples, because the only way to make the point is to say, look what happens if women are involved in a particular issue, and to make sure that older women mentor younger ones. And I think, to go to an earlier question about the youth generally, there isn't a book or speech that doesn't quote Robert Frost. And the one I like is that the older I get, the younger are my teachers. And I think that what we really need to do is understand the importance of cross-generational support for each other, for boys and girls, men and women, and to understand that we can learn an awful lot from each other.
It's a wonderful quote. Fatimata, the next question is yours.
My question is, growing up as a Muslim in the United States, hearing about the Uyghur camps in China, and in the past, the Jewish camps, I was wondering, what are the types of actions that the UN is capable of taking to prevent these sorts of human violations?
Well, it's something that I've been very concerned about. And when I was at the UN, one of the big things that was going on was a growth in peacekeeping operations, recognizing that they had to do with how people in countries were being treated. I grew up in Europe. I was born in Czechoslovakia and spent World War II in London. And there were people who said, well, we didn't know afterwards what was going on in the camps and to the Jews. Now we know everything that's going on everywhere, which means that there is a responsibility to do something about it. And there is a new kind of tenet at the United Nations, responsibility to protect, which is that if we know that something is going on in a particular country, the international community has to react in a number of ways. It's better if we can prevent violence and understand what's happening, but we do have a responsibility for each other, and we do know what's going on, and there are methods that are out there in order to stop the kinds of things that are happening and really recognize our responsibility to each other. And so I've spent a lot of time on this, and I'm very glad that you raised the issue. And I do think that the UN has the capability, with the support of the nation states, to do something about it.
Secretary Albright has really pioneered in this, and I think that the United States does have a role to play because our values, our history, our support for human rights is something that is very precious, and we need to stand up for it and continue to stand up for it because we can't take it for granted here or anywhere else. And so I think that that's an area where students today can really make a difference going forward at the UN and in their own countries. It requires great courage, but I know that that quality is in great supply among the students today.
I do completely feel like with the situation that is going on now with the Uyghur camps, that we know the information that we need to know, and it's time for us to take action. Like when we see human rights being violated, and we know we can take a stand, and we know we have the voice to do something and speak up for people who can't speak up for themselves, I think that's the first thing that we should jump at.
Well said. Our next question will be from Vismary.
In what ways can the UN facilitate peaceful discourse between nations about climate change and healthcare?
Well, those are two of the great challenges of this moment. And we're living in a globalized world where none of the problems that we face really can be solved locally or by any one country. They affect us all locally, but the solutions have to be with countries working together. And so whether it's climate change, even countries as powerful as the United States and China need to work together so that the whole world can solve this problem. So I think that that issue is affecting healthcare. We see it in this pandemic. Again, that problem is a global challenge right now. So we really need to come together. And it's institutions like the UN that are the only real place for international cooperation. So we need to build on the history and the effort that set that institution up, because it's benefited the United States, it's benefited Americans in their daily lives, even though they may not see it every day. But its work abroad to keep us safe, to keep us healthy, is absolutely critical. And it's important going forward even more as we become more and more connected.
Yes, and I might take a little bit longer to answer this because it is my passion. And I grew up with the UN. And just to tell people my background, my father was a Czechoslovak diplomat, and his last assignment was to be on a new commission created by the United Nations in 1947-48 about India and Pakistan over Kashmir. And if it hadn't been for the UN, we wouldn't be in the United States. And so I grew up really constantly thinking about the UN. I actually won the United Nations contest for the Rocky Mountain Empire, which is Colorado and Wyoming, and because I was able to name the 51 countries that were members of the UN at the time in alphabetical order. And then when I was in college, and my first vote was for John Kennedy, and I was in graduate school when he was president, and we lived in Washington, and Caroline was a little girl. And I studied about international institutions and the importance of them and what they could do. And I've watched the growth of the United Nations. And it is even more important than it has ever been, because there are more of these multinational problems that are out there, whether they're pandemics, nuclear proliferation, climate change. One of the things that I did recently was to launch a letter to be signed by heads of states and ministers in order to call for a strengthening of the multilateral system. And I'm just going to quote one paragraph from it. From climate change to human rights, gender and racial equality, and from sustainable development to international peace and security, the international community should honor its commitments to the UN's founding charter, Agenda 2030, and the Paris Agreement. There is a crying need for a stronger, more accountable, inclusive multilateral system that encompasses renewed intergovernmental initiatives with the full participation of civil society and key stakeholders. And we have managed to get the signatures of many, many eminent leaders. So this is something that I'm going to keep pushing for. And I'm so glad that you all, the next generation, see it as an important way to deal with the issues that are out there.
I think what Secretary Albright is saying about especially the pressing issues of climate change are quite critical, if not entirely critical, and if not the most critical thing right now affecting all of us.
I think that it's becoming more and more apparent every day that we need all to unite, because more issues are arising that don't just concern one country, it concerns us all globally. When we talk about climate change and healthcare, those are global issues that we need to all unite to solve.
I agree that a lot of different countries should work together. Honestly, it's better to work together than to try and do things separately without achieving much. Doing things together can make a goal come to mind easier. You can achieve it easier if everyone just works together. Honestly, it's not that easy, so to say, but if we take it step by step, I think it's possible for people to work together and achieve goals that couldn't be achieved when they do it individually.
As we wrap up the conversation, I'd like to offer our guests an opportunity to provide some additional comments and their thoughts about the discussion today and our future. Secretary Albright.
Well, I have to say I'm very impressed by the students that we heard from and their questions and their comments on things and their dedication. And it goes back to what I was saying in terms of the younger generation being able to push forward on issues. I know it's not fair for those of us that are older to put everything on the shoulders of the younger generation. But I am a professor. I find very interesting the kinds of issues that students are interested in and their community spirit and their understanding that whether it's through an organization like the United Nations or in their lives, that it is better and more important to do things together and cooperate to solve problems. And so, and that we need to respect and actually be very pleased at their capability of using modern technology, of being online, understanding, and being able to communicate with each other. And so hats off. I think this is great. And I'm delighted to have been a part of this and delighted to really see this younger generation push and try to figure out how to make a difference. Thank you all for being part of this.
Ambassador Kennedy, for the final word.
Well, I think this is a time when people are questioning the value of large institutions. And I think that's why it's more important than ever that younger people, students, get involved and hold the older generation as well as these institutions accountable, bring new energy, bring new focus to their work. So I hope that students here and students watching will think about how they can get involved in their own communities and also in the larger community to bring about change to address some of these issues. I know that there are tools available if you are involved, and these institutions won't get any better unless you make them that way. I met a woman when I was writing one of my books who said she was an activist who had been harassed and whose rights had been violated, and she never gave up. And she said, it's up to each of us to create a government that's close to our heart's desire, because if you don't do it, somebody else will. And I think the students here today are talking about collaboration, cooperation, building a future that's raises everyone up. And so if you don't do that, someone who has a very different approach will get involved instead. And so I think this is absolutely critical. You guys have a great opportunity, and I think nothing you do will be more rewarding. And I think it's important that companies like Microsoft also figure out a way to harness and empower you and your energy. So this is a great start, and I'm grateful to John and Microsoft for bringing us together, and also hope that that you'll continue to help develop pathways for students to get involved with institutions like the UN and international businesses like Microsoft and other global companies that have such an impact on global life today.
John, what Microsoft is doing is really fantastic in so many different ways.
Well, thank you very much for those comments and for the conversation that we've been able to have. For me, it's been really enriching to have this mix of some of our most experienced diplomats and some of our brightest students in conversation together. And so I'd like to just thank once again Secretary Albright, Ambassador Kennedy, the Marble Hill School, and our students, Chris, Fatoumata, Yao, Vismary. Thank you for being with us. And let's continue the conversation. Thanks.
So we can leave?
Yep.
It was worth waking up early for.